Hi there, I'm Vieno, and in this D3 tutorial I'll show you how to create the histogram layout in D3. And I think this is video number 17. So histograms are used for showing value distribution, and in preparation for this video I've prepared this ages.csv file which contains, let's imagine this is a population of individuals. We have the name of each individual and we have the age of that person. And since I'm lazy, I just call them all max. It doesn't really matter. We're just interested in showing the distribution of ages within this population. So whenever we have external data like this, as you know by now, we need to load that data. So I'll do that like this. And as you know by now, our data is stored in this data variable. So let's take a look at our data first of all. If we inspect this, you can see that we have an array of objects, each with the age property and the name property. But since we're only interested in the age of each person, we want to create a new array consisting of only the age values. And the way you do that in JavaScript is using something called the map function. So I'll create a new variable here containing our new data, and I'll say data.map, and this function goes through each element in our array and returns a new array based on our criteria within parentheses here. So I'll create a new function, and the I variable here, the argument of the function, refers to each element in our array. So this is just a sidetrack to our histogram, but I think it can be good to know. So we'll say return I.age, which returns the age property of each object. So if we take a look at this new data map, you can see that we have a new array consisting of the ages. But a problem is that whenever you load numbers from CSV files, they are actually returned as strings, not as numbers. So we need to convert these to numbers, and that is an easy task for JavaScript. We'll just use the parseInt function. So we'll say parseInt age, and if we refresh this now, we can see that we have an array of numbers. So let's create our actual histogram. Let's call it histogram, and we say d3.layout.histogram, and then we can specify the number of intervals that we want to display, and I'll say 5 here, and finish off by specifying where our data is coming from, and you do that like this. So if we take a look at our new data here at the histogram variable and refresh, you can see that we are returned with an array of arrays, and each of these, well, you can see first of all that we have 5 arrays here, which corresponds to the value that we supplied the bins method with, and each of these represents an interval of values. And so as you can see, the first array consists of 20 values, the second one 6 values, and so on. And if we take a look at one of these, you can see that they have, first of all, we have all a number of values, but we also have a dx property, an x property, and a y property. This is something that the histogram layout automatically calculates for us. And what these mean is, first of all, the dx property. The dx represents the range or span or width of each array or each interval. So if we take a look at the next array, this one has a span of 17.2, and this one has the same span, and that is because the histogram layout per default splits our data in uniform intervals, if you will. So this first array goes from 0 to 17.2, all the data elements within that range. The next one goes from 17.2 to whatever 17.2 times 2 is, and so on. And the X property stands for the lower bound in... Oh, can you hear the ice cream truck? The X stands for the lower bound of this array. So this one starts with 0, and the next one starts with 17.2, right? And yeah, so the number 17.2 is not actually represented in the array, but the range goes from 17.2 and so on. The last property, the Y property, contains the number of values in each range or each interval. So those are the 3 additional properties that the histogram layout provides us with. And now I'm just going to show you real quick how to actually visualize this data. And I think we'll have to wait for the next video to make it pretty, but yes. Okay, so we have our data here. What we need to do next is, well, first of all, create our canvas. So we'll say var canvas, and you've seen this a million times, so I don't have to explain this. Let's just give it a width. Okay, so let's bind our data to the document. We'll create a G element for each data element that we have. So we'll say select all bar data is coming from the histogram, enter, and then we'll append a G element. Now to each G element we'll append a rectangle, which is the actual bar. So let's say bars dot append rect, and here we need to specify the properties. So this is where the interesting parts comes in. First of all, let's give it the X property, which is the horizontal coordinate. And since SVG starts drawing from the top left corner, we can, let's just make this basic histogram to a number of bars going from the top to bottom. So the X position would be the lower bound of each bar. Or sorry, the lower bound of each bin or interval. So the first one will be drawn from 0 right here to the left. The second one will be start drawing from 17.2 and so on. So we'll just make this a function of our data. And we'll set this to return the X, which stands for the lower bound. And then the Y will also be a function. And since what we want to show with each interval or each bar is the number of persons that has an age within that interval, we want to make the height of each bar a function of the number of values in that interval or within that bin. So we'll return the Y property. Next, we need to set the width, and the width will be also a function, and that will represent the range or span of each bin. And since they're all uniformly, they have the same range, we'll just say return the dx property, which stands for the range. And finally, we'll set the height to oh, sorry, I made a mistake here. Each bar will be drawn from the top, so we'll just say 0 here. But the height of each bar will be a function of the number of values within it. So let's return dy here. And if we save this and refresh, we have our histogram here, but it's not really visible. Let's first of all give it a nicer color. Say steel blue. And just to show you what this looks like, I'll just multiply this so it gets a bit bigger. Something like that, and refresh, and you can see that we have our histogram here. You can't really tell anything right now. We need to append an axis and some values to each bar, but that was the basic principles behind the histogram layout, and in the next video we'll style this a bit. So I'll see you in the next video.